Okay, so Sema students and all the other fly people who have joined, please introduce yourselves so that the panelists feel like they know who they're talking to. We can start on the left here. Hey, but everyone.
Apparently, you need no introduction.
Guys.
Check. So that's our mic. That's the.
I am a mic.
Your mic.
That's our mic.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I'm Kelvin, music producer and a DJ, and I'm here basically to get more knowledge from Mr. Blinkisa and everyone in general about distribution. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, guys.
Hey.
Afternoon. My name is Ochwat. I'm a producer, saxophonist, and I'm really excited about this distribution. Yeah. So.
Hi guys, I'm a big fan of Ochwat. My name is Labdi. Singer-songwriter, Warutu player, producer now, composer, anything.
Hey guys,
Hi.
my name is Mike Moema, producer, mix engineer, and lead tutor here at Sema.
Hey. Hey. I'll be giving you this mic. I'm about to dip.
Hi everybody. My name is Jackie. I'm also known as DJ Shock. I'm a DJ and a producer in the making. So happy to be here. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Kamushes, producer, DJ, a bit of a violinist, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
But actually, it's a pretty long keyboard. You know what?
Yo, Sema. Yo, jina ni Elmbuyu the father na mimi ni producer na msanii mkubwa.
Hey, I know that's right.
Tutajuaje. Makes sense.
Hi guys, I'm Brian. I make sense. And I'm here for the music business part of it. So yeah.
I'll finish off.
What's goody?
That's good.
I'm Rafiki, and I'm a musician, and it's humbling to be here.
Hey. Next.
Hey, I'm Ian, I'm a producer and DJ.
Hey.
Echo.
Mic check. Hi. Have you had the echo?
Yeah.
My name is Echo. I'm so humbled to be in the presence of such an awesome energy. I'm ready to learn and thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Easy.
Hey.
Hey.
My name is Emery.
Hey.
I'm happy to be here. Merci beaucoup.
Ooh, bonjour. Oui, oui.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Achar. I am a musician, singer, songwriter, kind of getting into that. Fashion designer, stylist. I was around and I was invited and I was like, why not?
Yes, pull up. Why not?
Oh, okay.
Ooh, nice. Sweet.
Dope. Hey everyone, my name is Felix Muita.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm a producer, DJ. I work for Santuri as the project officer / comms officer. And for here, I'll be stagehand, sort of. Yeah. Welcome.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Nice shirt. You'll be able to get some of those soon, so keep an eye out for it. So this is how we do at Sema. We like to flip things our own way. So we did the introductions of the audience before the panelists. Today we actually have some people who are, directly involved in digital distribution, who have direct experience with IP and getting their records out successfully. So you'll get to learn from them. We also have moderating the panel, Sharon, who is the project manager of Sema. A little round of applause for her. And Wairimu, who is teaching digital distribution, one of the Sema tutors. James is doing tech, so shout outs to him for holding us down. And my name is Justin. You guys know me from the extracurricular events that we've been doing. And I'm going to let my panelists, the panelists, introduce themselves now.
I thought we'd start with, in order of protocol, hierarchy. Cool. My name is Poji. My real name is George. Someone told me the other day that if you like art, if you love art, you're also an artist, right? And so I started loving music maybe in high school. And then while I was in university, I started to engage with DJs. When I left university, I started working as a manager for the DJs. So I brought the business side to that. During that transition, I worked with a DJ who converted to being an artist. So then I helped to manage the artist side and got into artist management. And then I got emotionally scarred because managing artists is emotionally scarring. And so my therapy was to go and create ideas for corporates and people like that, but I still found a way to merge the two worlds where we could develop some concepts that corporates would like that used artists and the arts. In trying to solve for that, my business partner and I ended up creating a platform called MOOC, which was one of the solutions we were building. MOOC is short for Mukwanja, and it's a platform that helps you collect money online, essentially. And so we'll talk a bit about that.
Yo. I was just gonna say my name and then now you've got me thinking. So my name is Mnigelo Kubu. I'm a strategist and a brand developer, brand builder, and behavioral change marketeer by training. Been doing that maybe for the last 16 years. What I'm doing here is I've started over the last couple of years, we've started moving the idea of using all these corporate skills in the creative sector. I think the one thing I've realized after working across different corporates in different regions is that whether it's the music business or you're selling soap or soup, at the end of the day, there's a business element to it. So basically, I represent a group called Artist Rights Africa, ARA. And what we do is give back-end services to creatives. So our business is to do business for the part of creativity that requires the back-end side of things. So we're looking at legal, we're looking at finance, we're looking at project planning, pitching, we're looking at, we also then do the core work within delivering that strategy that we put to an artist. So that would involve your distribution, publishing, registration, basically all the business end things that you need after you've created product. And we don't only just do it for music, but we do it for all types of creativity. It could be from podcasting to film, photography, etc. But the main focus right now being obviously music and related works.
Microphone check 1 2. What is this? Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
So my name is Bill Salanga or Blinky or whichever name you want to call me is fine. Just don't insult me. I've been an artist for our first project album came out in 2008 with Just a Band. So it's been a long time of doing this. So I've been able to like be in a group that like has had its own imprint in Kenyan music, and then also transitioned from that to now being a DJ, producer, artist. I feel like I'm more of an artist. I'm an artist first before any of these things, because everything else comes like, sometimes I want to produce, sometimes I don't. But I always want to make art. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Can we get also Sharon to introduce herself and Wairimu, because you both have relevant experience. And I think everyone knows you from Sema, but maybe they would like to be reminded about, your work experience and yeah.
Awesome. So my name is Sharon Young, and I'm a music producer and mix engineer. I got into operations kind of similar to our friend over here, just realizing how many back-end services creatives need. So I started a company called Afreative, which seeks to empower African creatives. And we're all Afreatives, we're African creatives. So through that journey, we've been hosting webinars, we've been engaging with industry experts, and it's been a learning experience for me as well. So I'm super excited to contribute to the discussion and proud of Wairimu as well. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi guys, Wairimu Sisian. I'm an artist first, majorly a pianist. Are we on? Can you hear me?
A bit more volume on Wairimu's
More
mic.
volume. Don't shout. Yeah, so I'm an artist first, but been in different fields of the music industry. I feel like I've just dipped my toes in so many spaces, and yeah, so my current tangent is within publishing, distribution. That's what I'm mainly interested in. That's what I work in. But I've had experience in events management, played in a band for years. I'm just really passionate about music and try and learn as much about the field as possible. So currently I'm at Sema teaching you guys and doing what we do. But yeah, that's me. Cool. Let's get into it. Okay, so in our digital distribution class, we were kind of surveying the state of IP protection and what that looks like for a producer, especially at the beginning stages of your career. So I think it would be interesting to get into it from like Blinky, your perspective. At what point in your career did you start thinking like, okay, this is copyright, this is what I need to do, this is how publishing works? What was that juncture for you, and how did you go about it, and what difference do you think it made to the tangent of how your career has grown?
It's taken me a long time to actually really understand it, and I'm like, I always have the attitude of I always just want to learn. Yeah. So I think when we started with Just a Band, for example, we put out a song called Ha Hey, which spawned a video called, yeah, you know it. Yeah. And then what happened was that eventually that song started playing everywhere. And before that, we were like a really underground niche group. Then we made this video ourselves and then put it out. I think we were on Citizen in the morning. As we were going home, the song just started catching on. And it's by the time it's evening, we were just like, holy cow, what's going on? And then that's properly where I actually really began to understand the importance of ownership of something, because it's funny, like, you might not matter to anyone at some point, then you probably have like something, whatever it is, that becomes big, and then all of a sudden there's a wave of attention that comes your way. It's like a lot of positive and then a lot of negative as well. And I remember people being like, you need to copyright this name, you need to copyright the character, you need to do this, you need to do that. I was just like, holy cow, we don't even have any money on us to be able to do any of this stuff. And I remember even someone wanting, like, someone was like, oh, okay, this is not something that you guys have created. It's like, it's always existed in Kenya. Like, if it's always existed, why have you never done anything with it? So we ended up being like in kind of a storm where people wanted to copyright it. And we were fortunate at the time that there's a lawyer friend of ours who helped us now with that process of just securing that copyright. But that's when I understood how, one day you're just making things, and as an artist you want to put things out in the world, and then the next day it's like, okay, this can mean a lot.
Game change.
So that's when I actually started really understanding it. Then eventually learning that you need to register the music, because even if your song has 1 billion views, you need to have the back end proper. Otherwise, the money that you're accruing will just exist in the ether. And so that's eventually what I've been learning over the years. I'm going to pass the mic now, and then we'll come back to this if you have specific questions.
Cool.
Just on that, you said something interesting. Someone was saying you should register this. Someone was saying you should get your copyrights in order and register. So I think what we're trying to do now is be that someone. So that someone should be specifically the role we're trying to play is be that someone. The interesting thing for me, just listening to you, is you came in via the music into the music business. And I've entered the music business via the business side of things. And the thing that strikes me often when I'm speaking to artists, or because we consult on behalf of artists, is there's two key, therefore, at least for me, there's two fundamental things. There's making music, which anyone is allowed to, any form of art, you're able to just make it. But as soon as you want to make some money off it, then there becomes the necessity of registration, right, as a starting point. So my first thing, just picking off your question, is as soon as you've made something, the easiest and best thing to do is to then just register it. And there's so many basic resources, even locally, that allow you, when someone then challenges and says, no, that song was already existing, or the sound or whatever you've created, and you've got some kind of certificate that says, oh yeah, this is mine. And a basic resource I'll just share with anyone is there's something right here in Kenya called the National Rights Registry. And it's a platform run by Kikobo, the Kenya Copyrights Board. And all it is you log on to nrr.co.ke, if I'm not mistaken, and any kind of creative copyright can be registered. Could be a play, could be a script, could be a poem, could be a song, could be anything that you've come up with out of your mind, any type of intellectual property. And then you can register it there. In return, what you get is some kind of certificate that says, I made this and I own this. That for me is the starting point, because if you think about it, there's no business that can profit off anything that they don't own. So if it's a bar of soap, you have to have made that bar of soap. So similarly with music, after you make that music, I think the first thing then is to stake a claim to that piece of intellectual property that you've created. Then you're looking at you now have a first step into starting to commercialize that music. So I think there's always a difference between music and music business. The music business aspect is where I look at it is from after creation. Immediately after creation, what then happens? And the first, with the artists we work with, the basic sort of way of working is, as soon as something has been created, especially in the context of music, just have split sheets signed by everyone. I know it's a hassle because you'll hear things like, it's gonna kill the vibe, you know. And that's a big thing for most artists, is that as soon as you pull out a piece of paper, no, now what are we doing, right? But I think there's ways of getting those things done, but split sheets becomes your first place, because after that, now you've gone, so we own this piece of creation in this format. Then we can put it on NRR, and now at that stage we've got an agreement between who was in the room as to who owns what, and we've got a platform against which we're using the split sheets for, to register that piece of content, whatever it is. Now you can then start having a conversation about how do we turn, because effectively what you've done is you've made music, but you've registered it so it's become an asset. Now the question becomes, how do you commercialize the asset? But before you can, and you can't have an asset that's unregistered to anyone, because that's not an asset.
Right.
So I think that's where, for me, the line between music and the music business begins. After the creativity, there needs to be a stake a claim to the creativity, and in so doing, then that asset is now available for commercialization.
Cool.
And I'd add for producers specifically, because we also live in a market where the artist comes and then they pay the producer 10K and a beat, and our transaction is done, right? And so the producers in this case are giving up their rights for a singular check, which is an education problem, right? Once you know that no matter how much I choose to charge you to be the person who records on this beat, I continue to perpetually own a stake of this production, right? The production right in a song is a separate right from the performer's rights as a musician, and that. So also understanding in a registration what is your right and what is not. So just because somebody paid you to use your beat is not legally you signing off your production rights to the song. And I think many producers, because I've made 100 of them, or I've made 1,000 beats, so if I just sell them at 10K each, who cares about royalties? But the royalties is where there are guys who today make money from one jingle they did in 1972, and it just pays them for life, right? So I think we've grown up making music because of passion, because it's something we like, because it's a gift that we were given by God or whichever higher power we believe in. But when it reaches the place where now you've used your gift and you've done it, that conversion to an asset, especially in 2021 where we are today, becomes the first important step. That everything you're creating, when you sit in there and you're just like, hey, like, this is a dope sound, go register. This is now my official signature. Because there's a lot of guys, you hear Blinky and you're like, that's Blinky's signature. But Blinky's signature is something we hear, but does it make him money when that signature is used anywhere else? So I think as producers, there's also been a slight gray area, especially in this market, where when we look at the West, you see producers and even DJs able to have their music used by artists, and they become huge millionaires, but the guy is just a producer. How do we, that guy, it's not from receiving 10K per beat for sure. So understanding the rights behind production, I think, is super important.
Right.
I think I just want to add one thing. For me, like, back then, it was more like I was literally, you were doing it because you will love this thing. But eventually, the thing also has to love you back. Otherwise, you get to resent it. And I think one of the biggest turning points for me as a musician was when I first made my first EP. The first We Cut Keys. Then I had to now actually go through the process of registering it. But it became more clear when I released my last album, which was Everyone's Just Winging It. And I was working with this label in France, and every single thing had to be on paper and by the book. And that's when I saw it, because before that, I just knew, we make a beat, we just put it out. But then now when you're working with the industry, because sometimes I consider what we have here more seen, we can build it into an industry. But it takes a lot of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And then when we are actually, for every song, you have to write who wrote the lyrics, who wrote the music, who produced what, who played what. So in case of anything, if anything ever happens, if someone says, oh, okay, what we agreed then is not what we agreed now, we have the paperwork. And you agreed to it, I agreed to it. And it's just caused a huge shift into how I see things, because now I know. It's like there's no song that comes out without the split sheet, without. But back then it was more like, oh, we're homies, we're making music, let's put it out. And you can end up being like in situations where people take advantage of you because you don't know. And ignorance is expensive in the long run.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so this question is for Sharon because she has to run, unfortunately. Boo! Boo! Yeah, but just pegging off what Blinky has spoken about, like looking at the way the scene is in Nairobi and I guess Kenya and maybe generally in a Pan-African state, I think from my point of view, a lot of the conflict we have is like we can get into like how the system works or doesn't, but there's also the whole world of online music, which I think we can't even, we're not at the scene where at the point where Europe is because of like internet penetration, like all of these things. And for you, your mission working in backend with artists, and you say it's to, shape like the socio-economical landscape using music production, tech, and innovation. So that's also like working.
Is that from my bio?
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm correct. Yeah, so I just want you to talk on that and what that means, like working in the digital space compared to like, how industry worked before.
Sure. So the question is the opportunities that have arisen from digital?
Yeah, and whatever else you...
Anything else?
Yeah.
So I think the opportunities are immense, but we also have to look at, where we are and the socioeconomic context of that, right? So, for example, Afrative had a webinar where one of the panelists was Maureen Gakenya. She's a exec at MTech. MTech is the aggregator for Skiza. And she was telling us how that's where it's at, basically, Yeah. And I think for some of us, we're like, ew, Skiza teens, like it's the whack. But she was like, guys are getting bank like crazy. So I think, when you're tackling the question of, how does the digital landscape look like in terms of music production, distribution, we also have to look at, economics, class, elitism, and certain things like that, because not the average person has, I don't know, that $7-8 to spend on Spotify. If you're earning 10 Gs and you're spending a K, that means 10% of your income is going to the consumption of music. There's no one else who spends 10% of their income on that. So I think the fact that we have services or products such as Ringback Tunes, which is literally the highest in the world. I think it's the sub-Saharan countries and India, if I'm not wrong. I think that also gives an opportunity for vernacular artists, for rural artists to also have their
getting on the bag.
Yeah. Get their bag quite literally. So even for the summer students, you've obviously finished your projects. No must that you have to distribute or anything, but look into getting your music onto, Skiza, for example. It's not just, Spotify this, Spotify that. There's multiple aggregators. MTech is the only one I know of, but we talk about building the industry on the ground. So, Skiza is also a huge part of that ecosystem, so it's definitely something to look out for.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there?
Sure.
Just on this Skiza thing, I think that is such a good example of like having something that is on a scale where it works for the place where you are, specifically in Nairobi. There's a record label which I won't say the name of right now because we haven't announced a partnership with them yet, but they bought back a catalog that belongs to Polydor. I think they bought it back from them in maybe the 90s or maybe the early 2000s, and Polydor was basically getting rid of all these rights in this catalog, because it was costing them basically more, or maybe they were just like, what do you call it, consolidating their assets and getting rid of the ones that weren't as profitable. And this Kenyan label basically bought back all of this catalog of music that was Kenyan, a bit of Congolese music as well, and decided, fine, you guys don't want any of this, you think it's not profitable enough, we know we're not going to turn a big profit from it, but this is good music, this is important music, we're going to buy it back. And what they told us is, like, off Skiza alone, they make, like, I think 70% of their revenue, and it's allowed them to continue. Even though, you know, it wasn't, again, the most profitable catalog, there's value in having a wide pool of people being able to access your music. So I just think it's such a unique thing. We don't have this service where I'm from. You can't, like, assign the tune that somebody else hears when you're calling. It's a unique thing that exists here.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful.
Sorry, if I can just add to what you guys have just raised. I think for me, the key outtake in both what Sharon has said and Justin's touched on as well is, after you've made the song, like I said, you move into a different function from the creative function. And one of the key things within that function is to have a strategic intent. So what you're talking about here is, if you choose to put your music on Skiza, you need to have a plan as to why. You know, like, you're clear there's an audience for you, which maybe is not on Spotify as a good starting place. You're clear that you have a vernacular style or sound that might be not accessible, or where all your consumers have that particular smartphone with Spotify or Apple Music. But what I'm saying is, after the music's made and everyone has said, this is my stake of that piece of creative, then starts, like I said, you now have an asset. So then the next stage of this game is effectively figuring out how does this asset make money. So you've made the sound, you probably had an audience in mind, or you've used a particular language, so it starts self-selecting its audience. But what the point is at that stage is where it's neither about, for me, it's never about distribution or publishing or this or the other. That's the outcome. It's an execution. You execute that part of your strategy. But the idea is always to be clear. Now that I've made this, where do I want it to be? So who have I made it for? Where are they? And then your distribution strategy becomes, how do I get this piece of creative to that person who will value it? That's how you select your distribution, right? As opposed to going, I've made a song, I need distribution. To what effect? To whom are you trying to distribute this thing to? So I think I'm going to keep laboring this point, but I think for me, once you've gotten out of the studio, you kind of put on your other hat now that says, when I consume music, it gets to me in some format, right? I find out about it in some format. And these are the same steps you're taking as a creative or as the artist on the other side, saying, for me to get my piece of creative to its intended user or the person who will enjoy it, who are they, where are they, how do they consume it? And once you've got kind of those things, then you can start selecting, this is the best platform to distribute. So I'll go through Skiza, or I'll put it on Spotify, or this or that. So I think it's necessary to take off your creative hat after the product, put on a different type of hat, which is now thinking about, I've got something of value, how do I create value out of it? And I'm not saying you then leave, not that those two worlds can't exist together. I think creativity and productivity do work hand in hand. But just to illustrate the point that you do now need to be clear from this stage, how do I get this thing to become value? And that's always starts with, who did you make it for? Yeah.
There was a part in your question about socio-economic. Yeah. All right. I think before digital distribution, we developed formats to go to the people, right? And so we had a very clear idea of who you are distributing to. I went to radio station X, I spoke to DJ so-and-so, and then it played on this show and it went. I went to Club X. A lot of you guys are producer DJ, which means I can produce, then I can go to the consumer and I can sample it to the consumer and I can figure out who listens or who likes it. those worlds need to work together even as we make music. So if I make dope music and the DJs don't play it, or the radio stations don't play it, or that before it gets to streaming, I don't just wake up and search for a guy. I need to have heard of this person somewhere. So also building this ecosystem within us for the thing to turn from a scene to an industry where there's DJs, there's venues, there's listening sessions, there's conversations. I think that's as important as digital distribution, because now we go and then you put out one post that says available on all platforms, and then it's my work to go and find it. But we've always been fed by, in this case, the DJ is a curator, right? So we've been fed by the curator. Now the curator has become a playlist on Spotify or Apple. I don't know that guy who makes it, but I still know the DJs and that. So how do we self-curate still within especially our ecosystem? Because what we're saying about Skiza, that's a Kenyan solution that's providing revenue, right? So it doesn't need all platforms. I don't need listeners in Europe for my Skiza to make money. So if there's an opportunity locally, if I make a beat and there's a couple of Mwemas out there who will hear my name and be like, I'd like to hear a song by another Mwema, that's already an audience, right? So how do we think local for me, and maybe that's more of a distribution conversation, but how do we think local in how we build the industry?
I'd like to keep asking you, like, okay, speaking of keeping it local, building local, maybe you can tell us in the group, like, about my MOOC and how that started, and from an music industry perspective, what you saw, you know, your experience with artists, or like how artists approach platforms, and any maybe pointers you would give a starting artist in regards to like all the content that you need, or the data that you're putting online, you know, like just, yeah, I hope that's clear.
Cool. I'll start by addressing the my MOOC, okay? I still hear people calling us my MOOC, and we are called MOOC. It's changed, but it's also it's an IP story. So before we officially launched, we worked with some developers, and one day they went and registered our name, all right? And so at the point we were ready to launch, we didn't have the name MOOC, although our entire platform was called MOOC. So we added the my at the beginning to be able to launch, and then went into battles to get our name back. Wow. So protect even your names, okay? Even echo. If somebody will come and take the echo away. So register everything, right? When we built MOOC, we weren't trying to solve for distribution, right? We were trying to solve our own problems of receiving money online. When we moved into doing ticketing, it was because we had experience in that field and we knew how to solve some of the pain points. What actually happened is that there's an artist who came to us and said, the same way that you guys have built a solution for my friend doing events, can you guys help me sell my EP that's coming out? And the main thing that artist had in mind is that I already know my audience, right? I'm not trying to go out there and guess. I have my homies, there's about 100 or 200 of them. If I put the thing at 300 bob, they're all going to pay. So we sat and figured out a system. Now she didn't care at that point about IP or how will I protect. She was like, let them download the music. It's the same as them buying a CD or what. Right. So we just went and created a system where she was able to come, set her price, put the link out to her homies, and receive M-Pesa directly. All right. Now the value for her was that, I mean, I could go and put it on the other platforms, then learn about distribution and how to get on the playlists and wait $10 or $20. I don't know how much guys make as streaming happens. Blinky can tell us about revenues, right? But I think for me, the value of 1,000 bob today versus some money that will come in the future that I can't count is a lot higher. Yeah. And understanding that, I mean, we're in a country with 50 million people, right? At least half of those people are young. At least, let's even say 10% of those people like music. That's 5 million people we have access to, right? There's a couple, let's say 10,000 or so, who go for events across, let's take Nairobi alone. So if these 10,000 people are available who like listening to music, that's already an available audience. Now, we've been, because distribution and the systems that exist are not from our space. These are systems that are coming from an industry that's already a lot more developed, right? And so for those ones, they've taught us that the more numbers you bring, the more value it is for you. So us guys are out there trying to chase 1 million followers or 1 million views, but 1 million is a lot. 1 million is a lot of people in the country, right? So for me, I started to look, or for our team, we started to look at, if you had an audience that's as immediate as this, we have 50 people available. How can I monetize these guys, and how do I monetize them regularly? And then I don't have to have a middleman or somebody who then, an aggregator or who does things. There's a way for me to directly reach this audience. And so if I build this audience from 50 to 100, then my audience is growing and my money is growing. Let's assume we do an EP, right? And I say every month, because I have an audience of 50, because we consume music a lot more now. So if every month I'm willing to release an EP, and my EP will be 250 bob, right? The day I have 100 followers, it's 25,000 bob. If I up that to 200 followers, it's 50,000 bob a month. If I go up to 1,000 followers, I have 250k a month, right? So let's even reach 1,000 as the ceiling. That all I want to do on all my social media and everywhere is reach 1,000 people who are consumers, not fans. So we've built a big fan base, but we've never been able to monetize that. We saw that in events where you could have a huge fan base, and then you put out a ticket price and nobody comes. You're like, but we have 1,000 guys on the page, but they don't come for the gig. So our work as creators should be to continue to build a consuming audience, because that's where we are now. If that audience is 1,000 people who I can see and who I know, and I have their data, and I can continue to feed them for 250 bob a month, that's how you grow your distribution. Then anything that happens out there, because now those people will go and share with their homies, they'll start to share in their playlists, and then suddenly your music starts to reach other people, which becomes your residual income. But right now we've been so focused on the big money is out there. So we spread ourselves thin, because it costs you money to distribute globally, right? You have to pay a subscription to an agent, then you have to do this, then you start paying taxes in America for your music, which the consumer is in Eldoret. So you've had to go all the way there to get $1 from a guy who's just 2 minutes from you. He had to go get a credit card to subscribe to Spotify. Like, you've given him such a hurdle to access your music, yet the guy is sitting right here, and if you send him a link, he'll give you 50 bob on M-Pesa quickly. So that's the thing we continue to solve for. We've started the journey. I feel like there's still a long way. I was just telling Justin, we've been thinking about how we can get into streaming. If you look at platforms like YouTube and all these guys, these are 15-year-old platforms, right? So if we started 15 years ago, we'd have a YouTube today. So if we start today to build a platform that distributes to the people here, to Kenyans here, and we say there's a target of 5 million, only 10% of Kenyans who, Skiza Tunes has 11 million people who are subscribed to it. So even my 5 million is a small target. There's already 11 million in this country who pay every single day to have a ringback tune, right? If that money came to you, they're paying you a bob a day. If somebody paid you a bob a day instead of paying it to the aggregator and then to who and who and who, you'd be a lot better than you are right now, right? So starting to think of winning or distribution from a local point where it's easier for me to earn Kenya shillings, because that's what I need to spend today, and I need to spend that again tomorrow, and then growing from there. So we all want to start from all platforms, and so you're not able to find or develop an audience, you're not able to understand the data around this audience. We rely too much on what they tell us, so you also don't move around to meet DJs and see clubs and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a bigger value in looking inward than right now trying to be. Then when you reach Blinky status, then the Spotifys and them will come to you, right? Then they'll be like, let's do this. Adele was able to make them change a setting. They won't do that for Blinky. No disrespect to Blinky, but you know, you're not bringing them the people that they need to change a setting. So if you're bringing Mook the people that they need to change a setting, we'll change a setting, because we understand the audience around us. If you say my guys need the system in Swahili so that we can do X, that's something that at a local level we can do versus at a global level. So I think, and I'm happy to see that even at the creative level, there's a lot of people who've started to think that way themselves. So when I see someone like Njugush with a site where you can pay 5 bob to watch his skits, that's a start, right? So we can all go and build little platforms, but I think starting to think local distribution first and winning at that gives you then the muscle and the power to move up.
Okay. I think, Blinky, maybe you can tell us, like, what sort of distribution strategies have worked for you with just a band, individually, and also for you with the artists that you work with, like, what are the things that you look at? And also, for you specifically, like, what attracts you to the artists that you work with? What is it that makes you go like, okay, we can build here?
So I think one of the things that I really liked, particularly with Just a Band, was how we always worked with what we have. And I think that's always very important for any artist who's like to think about, what do I have now? So when we put out Scratch to Reveal, each of us borrowed money from our moms to print the CDs, which we also like started selling ourselves. And then Beatties eventually became a member of Just a Band. I went to play him the first record, and he was like, yo man, I like this. Can I have like a bunch of them so that I can also go and sell to my friends? So it's like from me to him to his friends. And that's how we ended up getting an audience. And I don't know if people do that anymore, where you believe in your work and then your friends who are your friends but also become fans of the work and start to tap into it. And that's how we got an audience. Like, I remember the first show we played, I didn't expect a lot of people to come. And then when we saw it's a full house and we had no experience performing, all of us were panicking because we didn't really expect that people were going to care that much. And this was like 2 weeks after the album came out. Then eventually, with the second album, we were going to sign with a media house that's here. And then this friend of ours was starting a label called Pena. And she was like, no, you guys, I think we might have a better home with us. So they distributed the second album, which was probably the most successful Just a Band project, because it ended up going so far and opened up a lot of doors for us. So now that's when we started looking at, okay, you can put your music here, you can put your music. It wasn't, I don't know if Spotify, we didn't have Spotify then, but it was we put it on iTunes. It was on iTunes. Then, and eventually it got good enough numbers to actually show us that this thing can work, because again, we were dealing with an issue where, I don't know, there's this gatekeeping thing that happens sometimes where people feel like the audience won't get this. And so that happened to us a lot, where it's made in Kenya, but someone will be like, no, the Kenyans won't understand this. Like, who made you the person that says Kenyans won't understand? Just do your job. And we had to circumnavigate that, Nini. And eventually people caught on to it. And then now for my own stuff, I feel like Spotify was becoming a bit more prevalent. So we ended up doing that thing. And now I feel like there's been a lot of luck along the way. Whereas, like, I'll tell you a song like Kilamu, for example, which has never really played on any Kenyan station as that I know of, ended up being picked up by some station in one of the biggest stations in Paris. I started playing it. And then you can see that the numbers now start, because sometimes it's a luck thing. But also I feel like Podgy's it's very cool to be, because we've grown up at around the same time. like with our own, me as an artist, him as someone who's building a platform that wasn't necessarily thinking about the music, like distribution side of it, but you're growing into it. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, that's a really good way of looking at this, because we don't know everything. We know some things. If you're a producer and a DJ, you know some things. Mnike knows some things about the music business that an artist might not know. So it's also very cool to be able to bump heads with people who might give you insights that you might need for your own journey. Have I gone around? I think that's good.
Okay. So I asked quite a few questions. The first one: how do we choose artists we work with? Personally, I can't work with someone I don't like. It just doesn't work, especially because Poji said earlier that artist management can leave you scarred. You don't want to put your soul and heart and everything into a person or a being that you don't believe in. So first for me, it's the person. Then secondly, it's the project or the art. Like, it has to personally connect to me for me to be able to work it. Or else, when there's no money flowing, which is most times with art, money flows only at certain points after you've completed the art, when you start getting bookings or gigs or whatever. So in that time, what's keeping me motivated? The art has to be appealing to me as well. So that's one thing. And then on the I really like what Blinky said about what you have now. I think I hear also quite a lot of like even yesterday we got because I have a larger team, but we got an email from someone, an artist, asking, so I've got a project, do you sign people for project basis, and the first question I was asking myself, or that we usually then ask artists, is what is there to manage? So what do you want me to manage? When you're saying, can we work together on this project? What is it that you can't do that you imagine I can do, right? And the truth of the matter is, most times, an artist needs to get to a space where, so another lens that we use to pick artists that we work with is, I feel like an artist that we're ready to work with has to be fully independent. And what I mean by that is fully independent in making their art, end to end. So for instance, if you're a musician, you should be able to make music to the completion of the music. If you're an actor or whatever, but you should be able to complete your part of the creation till the end point. Because the challenge of then having a business partner come in and tell you what to do with your creative also starts the relationship on a rocky level. So you almost want to have or at least with us, we would prefer to have an artist who's completed their creative thought and said, this is what I want to do. Then you can tell me, okay, now that I've made this, I want to get this to Eldoret. Then I can then talk to you about how we can figure out, because I have trucks to take product to Eldoret, right? But I think it shouldn't be the business partner's responsibility to tell you what your vision is. So that's what I mean by the artist has to be independent enough to be able to complete their creative thought. Then the second thing is to ask, what is there to be managed? If there isn't administrative work to be managed, because also I think sometimes artists forget that if someone's going to be doing your administrative stuff, managing this and that for you, they also need some form of payment, right? So this brings me to my next point. Are you doing enough business for you to require paid for assistance? All right? If not, do the business yourself. It will give you two things. One, you learn the end-to-end of how your business should function at a small scale, so that when you hire people, you know who you're hiring for this particular role. You're hiring this person for this particular role, for this particular role. The third thing is, by the time it comes a stage where you're hiring a team or you're building a team around yourself, if you're paying people, you're quite clear paying them to get back. Because you've seen when you do this, this happens. So if I get 2 guys to do this, we might be able to double the output. So let's say managing your bookings. But if you don't have bookings, don't get a bookings manager, figure out how to earn bookings so that when you bring someone into the team, you're upskilling them on how they can be effective at getting bookings. Yeah. Then the third thing is not everything has to be money as well. So when you're building a team around yourself, you don't have to always pay everyone. And I'm going to say this quite carefully. You can trade because you have a certain skill. I listened to what guys here were doing. I don't think there's any one person who said they do one thing. You know, there's production and a DJ, a vocalist, and there's that. So everyone's doing multiple things. So what Blinky said is, what do you have in your ecosystem? If I don't know, I'm a good rapper, I know Blinky can produce. So could I offer him something that he requires for his part of his project in exchange for something I'm looking for from him? And this brings me specifically now to IP. And I think this is the same way you need to look at IP. We're all talking, and a lot of the conversations around online and otherwise around own 100% of your masters. Okay? That's fine. But if your masters are not worth anything at the time, you own 100% of nothing. If you own 50% of a master or an album or a track, like Blinky said, that has gone viral, that's worth way more than 100% of a track that's still in your catalog in the studio, right? Now, I say that to say, we said earlier that once you've created a song or piece of creative, you have now an asset. If you can't trade with that particular asset as well, because we don't always have cash, right? So if Blinky and I make a song, or if he makes a song, he has 100% ownership. He comes to me and he says, listen, I don't have tunes to pay you right now as a tour manager. But tell you what, out of these songs that we're working on this project, which I have 100% ownership of, I'll cut you a stake into these songs in lieu of me being able to pay you upfront at this moment, right? And we now figure out how we're going to commercialize these masters that we have. And he says, for instance, I want you to plug me into the tour that's happening in Durban or Cape Town or Joburg or whatever, because you happen to know people there. Now, there's an incentive. He doesn't pay me in cash, but now we co-own to whatever percentages that is, this thing that we're working on, where I can now also earn my return on investment. So what I'm saying is, the IP, don't always look at it as you have to own the whole thing because you are the artist. The question again, I go back to is, what is the strategy? If the strategy is to get you out there, so Blinky wants to play in Joburg, I can give him access to that. He can't pay me upfront for that, but how else can he use what he has, which is the music asset, to cut me into making my own outcomes out of that? So similar to the question you asked about producers, and Poji touched on it, was to say you can charge an artist for a beat, but you don't have to let go of your composition rights, right? And now I can also discount that beat for more ownership on the composition rights, so that if the song does go viral, I'll earn my money back for which I didn't get paid up front. But now, if you look at it, you're already saying you've realized that this asset can pay me in two ways. It can pay me through me creating it, being commissioned to make the work. But two, I can get paid on how it performs in the market, which is on the royalty side of things. Okay. The last point, when you make a song, just as a guess right now, since a lot of people here make music, when you make a song, how many types of rights are possible to attach to one song? Just a guess from anyone. I mean, you hear things like sync rights, performance rights, production. So how many rights do you imagine are attached to one song? Excuse me? 4 or 5? 6. Actually, you have up to 6 rights when you create one piece of IP like a song. Now, if there are 6 types of ways of earning from this product, this is why I'm going back to the point is, you don't need to hold all of them. So as a producer, as an example, Blinky, let's do something. Blinky gives me a beat. He says it's 50K for the beat. I'm like, Blinky, I can only give you 20 at this time. We can also get into an arrangement which can be done in the split sheets itself, where we say after we've completed the song, whenever I perform the song and I get a booking physical booking to perform at Alchemist or whatever the club or space is, I'll pay, because in the performance rights, Blinky, we've agreed that in lieu of the payment, he can have a certain portion of the performance rights as the producer for me not being able to pay him his full 50K. So whenever I book a gig, and we can even put a time period to it, so in the next 3 years on this particular song, we can be able to, every time I perform the song, Blinky also gets, if I get a 10,000 shilling booking, he gets 2,000. So my point is, a piece of music or a piece of creative creation is an asset because you can trade with it. You can't have an asset if you can't trade with it. So you don't always have to be paying your creative ecosystem money, but you also don't always have to be attached to 100% ownership if that ownership is not going to allow you to get the product to market. So you should be able to trade with your asset as a creative as well, with other creatives in lieu of cash sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll just make my comment and then I'll let Labdi ask her question. I just want to underline what's been said. We know exactly, like it was said before, that like when you're in studio, you might think it might kill the vibe, but what you're doing when you're making that split sheet, what you're doing when you're coming to an arrangement with another producer, another DJ, a vocalist, and you're exchanging services, you're creating value. You're finding ways to go beyond the cash that you don't have, and you're breaking bread with another artist. And over time, if everybody begins to do that and finds the alternative ways, you're not just finding a way beyond your economic means, you're also creating a solid network for yourself. You guys are creating assets out of nothing. Well, not out of nothing. You're talented, you have all these skills, but if you keep it to yourself and you don't come to an arrangement with the other artist, you don't have an asset. It's not getting out there, like we said, right? So really, I want to underscore how important that is, and I want all the students to start thinking about this for every single piece of art that you're making. Don't just think that you're having fun in the studio. It's fine, do that. But as soon as you're done, like, take the time to do it because it's meaningful. It's a sign of respect to the other artist, and it's an investment in both of your futures, right? You can't just dream that it's gonna, it might go viral. Then what happens? That might ruin the relationship between you guys if you don't have an arrangement. Why not instead be proactive and think ahead and think of ways you can lift each other up, So I love that insight. That was great. Labdi?
I was going to ask, based off of what you've talked about, like the performance rights, right? Left. Haha. Okay. Sorry. So when you're talking about, if you want to split, let's say, for example, you gave the example of Blinky offering to pay someone a percentage of their performance rights. And sometimes I get confused because I realize that there's two kinds of performance payments, and maybe you need to specify, because there's one that's collected by the CMOs, and then there's the performance fee that no one can touch apart from the artist who's performing at that time. So maybe could you specify which one you're talking about?
So the fee, the reason why you can collect a fee is because you have an associated right, correct? i.e., if I don't have the right to perform the song on stage for payment, I shouldn't be able to collect the fee. So let's park the fee is just a thing. A fee is attached to a right always. So when you collect a payment, you're collecting it on behalf of a particular right that has been monetized. So when he gets on stage and performs a song, it's because he has the performance rights for it, right? But what I'm saying is, in your split sheets, amongst the various rights, you might have your the right to reproduce, which is linked to your master right? The ability to make a reproduction, a copy. Linked to your when you compose that song, right? That composition allows someone else to perform your composition, correct? So that's why you can do covers, right? So what I'm saying with that, with this arrangement is we've had just in the last month 2 artists where an artist was saying, I like your production, and we work with the producer. I like your production. I want us to do an EP together. Right? I'll sort out studio and I'll put my voice on it and I'll do my writing. You put together all the production aspects of it, down to mixing and mastering. We'll co-own all the rights, including performance. Now, the producer is not going to perform it on stage, but every time she gets a booking and performs that song on stage, 50% of that performance will go to him. And that is her way of recouping him, because she couldn't pay him for his beats up front. So instead of giving him 100,000 and then saying thank you for the beats, he's agreed that, tell you what, give me 20 so I can at least have transport to come to the studio. But for the next 2 years, when you're performing this track, or whatever the period could be, perpetually even, whenever you're performing this track, I have a component of the performance right that I own. So if you're getting 10K from that track, and of the performance right, I own 50%, I want 50. And we agree that it's not that I'm pushing it on you. We're agreeing that together while we're working, because you don't have that money to pay me up front. And also, maybe I'm also understanding that there's an opportunity for me, because you have a big name. I've got a hot production. My name will also grow on the back of this. So maybe don't even give me the 20K, but let's just split future incomes. Yeah.
Can I also say to that point that because we're in such a young market for music, we also have the leeway to create our own systems. So if you're working with an artist who's signed to a major label somewhere, they don't have permission to discuss some rights, because the way the label contract looks like, you don't own anything, you're a pawn, right? We're trying to build an industry where that's not the case. So then if we're trying to build a community of collaborators, when we work together, can everybody eat, right? In the other system, you guys can work together all you want. Me as the label, I still need to keep my 70% of everything that's made. So whether you're performing, whether it's being streamed, the structure has been made to Nyonga, the artist. So if we're going to build our own structure, can we not be the guys who Nyonga the next guy, because me, I'm the one going on stage to perform, so forget about the producer. If that's the way we build our industry, then we're in trouble. So I think there's also a lot of things we blindly pick, but it's also to scrutinize some of this and say what's the best way that we can develop something, because as he said, right now we can fight to own 100% of zeros, which is easy. Nobody wants to fight over that zero. So if we're going to actually grow, how do we make sure everyone is making a little something?
I've been seeing this trend in the last particularly in the last few months, more like it started towards the end of last year, where a lot of people, like older artists, were selling a lot of their catalog, and maybe like whoever, Eric Clapton or Bob Dylan, and I was really wondering about that, because I got confused about it, because like I've always thought that the thing was to own, but the more I've studied it over the past few months, the more sense it makes. It's like, if I'm Bob Dylan and I'm however many years I am, and someone is giving you cash money up front to own this music that you made over your life, and you don't know how long you're gonna be around on earth for. It's like, so they're cashing in for like hundreds of millions, and probably these guys are gonna make billions, but you never know. It's like a stock thing. It really made me understand that thing of like, when the time comes to question like some of the things that you've held on to really closely, and you interrogate it, and you move with what makes sense, move with what makes sense.
Thank you for that. I think before we open the floor up for any other questions, a huge part of the conversations we were having in the distribution week was just questioning like our systems and structures, you know, like hearing about MCSK being like decredited, re-registered, like all of these things, you know, this endless cycle. And just understanding that essentially, like, you know, our systems for royalty protection, copyright protection, collection, sometimes it's easy to lose hope, yeah. And I just want to pose this question to panel. As artists who are breaking out, because I did realize that we're kind of passionate about creating systems that work. So what does that look like for us? Do you have any like actionable steps or thoughts, ideas? Because we're all intent on, you know, why can't we build industry here and not rely on, let's say, a song popping off in France? So we had guests who were telling us, like, I'm not even bothered registering my music here. I just let my external publisher do this for me, you know? And we haven't lost hope. So do you have any actionable steps for starting off artist, producer? How do we challenge the systems in existence? What is the part we can play instead of just sit and complain and contribute to all the whining, you know? What can we do at the onset of our careers to make a better working space for ourselves and for the future?
Strong. Wow. I think the answer to that is collaboration. I think it's true, the system is broken and the people who built those systems are not us. But there is a huge strength in numbers. So for example, 20 people have gone through Sema. The 20 of us form an electronic music association. And we are the ones who decide how much we charge for shows. We're the ones who figure out how we split music in our game. And so when the next 20 come, they join the team. Then now we are 40. In 5 years, we'll be 500 or 5,000, right? Then we go and we say, actually, MCSK don't collect for us as 400 artists. We've signed this paper where we have an arrangement with Safaricom to collect our own directly. You have the power to do that. So the gatekeepers, right, that he talked about have made us believe that the industry works like that. That you come and you register to MCSK so that next year I give you 2,500 and then we are done, right? So we have the opportunity now to build the system. So everyone says, you know, just us, we give up. But if we just kept working together and collaborating, that us guys who've gone to this school, or us guys who like this genre, or us guys who live in this country as artists, because I always fault back to the artists or the musicians, because we complain, but you're still waiting for the check, right? And you're still registered and you're still that. But nobody is. If MCSK had no membership, they wouldn't exist. There are still some people who are members and who are continuing to sign on to that. So I think there's opportunities to build our own systems, to build our own membership. We've been privileged to have conversations where it's not just us who know the system is broken. So the government, other countries are looking at us and they're saying there's a lot of revenue there, but we've read stories about how associations work in that country. So we have an opportunity to fix it ourselves. The power of the internet today means that I don't even need the radio station to be the one that breaks me. That if I have access to Influencer X, or if I have access to TikTok and I know how to do some dances, we could be hot by next week, right? So I feel like the opportunities right now are more in our hand than they were 10 years ago. How do we use that? That right now, if I want to register my work, I don't need someone to do that for me. I can go on a website and do that myself. And then I can do the TikTok dance, and then I can put it out. So all that process I can do myself to success. If we did it together, we were having a convo offline about Amapiano versus Gengeton, right? And there's a conversation around volume. Anything that comes in volume has a bigger chance than the next guy. So if we choose to make music, but there's not I think there's more than 2,000 Amapiano songs that have come out in like 1 week, right? Every day they're just releasing, and that now if we decide that's the direction we're gonna go, And it's exciting to hear orutus and all those things in electronics. So if we decide this is the sound that we want to push, and every month we're releasing 40 singles, right? Everyone here chucks 2 every single month for the next year. We've built a sound. We now start to build a following. And then from that following, we start to monetize the merch. We start to monetize equipment. We figure out, we now have a voice. But it starts with us being able to collaborate intentionally, I think.
And just to add on what you're saying, like there's something when a lot of you are introducing yourselves, you're saying, which I distinctly remember when we were coming up. I never really had it. It's like, I'm a producer, DJ. And that's the power of compounding, where it's like what I can see it now is like, and it's so cool to see. But then, which means that the next generation, there's going to be like another bunch of, another hyphen that they have in there. And that's one of my favorite things this afternoon. I had a point, but it's disappeared. I'll come back to it.
Just out of interest, is anyone here registered to MCSK? Are you Blinky? No. So
I'm registered.
Yes.
Just not with MCSK.
Not with MCSK. So again, in different rooms, I've asked this question, and especially the older artists, all of them are usually registered. All of them are usually unhappy, but none of them have gone to then deregister. So to Poji's point, admin is also like the function of administration is not purely just the registering side of things. It's also the deregistering when the thing is not serving you, so that you don't give them the vote of the power of using, because how MCSK gets its power is that it's given a mandate by its members. So with no members, you can't have a mandate. And you also have minimum thresholds, I think, of the number of members you have in order to have a public mandate. That's one. 2, specifically, MCSK can't be blamed for everything, or PRISC or CAMP or whatever, because they don't cover all the rights. They cover public collection, right? Collective collection. That's why it's a collective society, right? There's in Kenyan copyright law, when I stream a song on my phone, in my earphones, right, to my phone or my personal device, that's not a function that MCSK or any other of those bodies can collect on. That's why your distributor or your aggregator collects on those. That's individual collection. So my second point would be also taking some time to acquaint yourself with the industry that you're working in and understanding what are the rules that control your behavior and your ability to collect and not. Right? So as much as a fly fit for stage is a good investment when you're performing, investing in a consultation for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, with a lawyer or someone who understands this type of stuff is just as valuable. So Blinky said he's registered to collect in Kenya, but just not through MCSK. The first question you should be thinking is how. All right? And secondly, to Poji's point again, I think we can find it if I bother to look hard enough as to how many minimum amount of people you probably need to create a mandate, right? Which you then can go and inquire about getting licensing against from a Kenya Copyrights Board, which is the body that offers all the licenses to all these different bodies, right? Because it's a statutory body linked to the IP through the eyes of the law. So again, if you can, MCSK being able to create that mandate is a private function given power by Kekobo because it's got members and they have a mandate. If we sat here this afternoon and we wrote a mandate, we all put our names to it, we could deregister from whatever other bodies and start to create the 500 or 1,000. I'm not sure how many people you actually need to have a collection association. But it shouldn't be difficult to be able to get another. I think the last publication I saw said for MCSK had something like 22,000 members is what they were claiming, 20 odd thousand. And I don't think they even have that number. So that's not a very difficult thing if you think about how many musicians are there in the country already, or artists that there are in the country that can be able to stand and challenge it. The challenge for me is that we're not organized as a unit. So again, I would start with, we all need to be able to understand what are the rights we have when we make a piece of product, so that we're all talking the same language. If we all then own our rights after we've made them, and we've protected our rights in some form or function of registration, already now all of us own all the IP that is being misused. So we can start to challenge the different bodies that are using the IP. Or we can say, on these particular sets of IP, we want collection to be done by this particular aggregator because they hold the metadata, or we can share that metadata specifically with them. So I don't think we're as powerless as we may sometimes put across, especially when we work together, because then if even for a week every musician was to somehow agree just in Kenya that we're withholding our music just for a week or 3 days, there'd be no radio, there'd be no real TV. You'd be able to make those statements, but the challenge then becomes, how do we have an organized approach? Because if I'm hungry and I'm going to shortchange the system, then it doesn't work as a whole.
Yeah, just to add on that point, I was a member of MCSK, but then eventually at some point I understood that it was operating like a cartel, and we put so much work into this. So eventually, like, my team worked on it, and I personally had to go and deregister. But also for me, it was a statement, because I'm just like, I don't want to be a part of this cartel. But there's a way that you can, I remember talking, I don't know if you guys know Manchild. And he told me that there's a way that he registered online to ASCAP or something. So there's ways that you can register to another body that can take your work a little bit more seriously. That's one point. The second point I wanted to say is that eventually you will... nimesema eventually no more. At the heart of it, the most important thing is the work. And you know how much Spotify pays. It's like 0.00 whatever. A fraction of a cent. You'll need to make a lot of music or a lot of bangers to make any real money off of these platforms, in terms of, if we're just going to be honest. So what I feel like sometimes Kenyan artists need to be told and to understand is that just because you have that one song, whether it's the biggest song in Kenya or not, it's not enough. The work ethic needs to improve, because at some point there's gonna be a tipping point, but the work is what's gonna be, in my opinion, the thing that pushes that tipping point, because the South Africans understand it, the Nigerians understand it. We are even bigger consumers of some of these guys than we are of our own music. You'll go to any of these pages for Diamond, you'll always see Wapi Likes the Kenya in the comments. I produced for this chick. She's from Cape Verde. She's called Elida Almeida. I went to her YouTube and found a Kenyan over there, Wapi Likes the Kenya. Not even on the song I made, on some other song. I was like, wait, like, how did you guys even know this guy? But it's like, we don't see that in like our own pages. It's like Wapi Likes the Kenya on a Kenyan song. It's like we put a lot of our love into other people's music. And the thing that's going to change it is if a lot more people are making such a racket that we can't ignore it. So that's going to be my parting shot right now, because I might leave shortly.
Not before we get some questions from the audience. You're not.
I have someone waiting for me in the studio, but I'll take some questions.
And does anybody want to go first with the questions? Does anybody have some inquiries, comments?
Hello. I wanted to know what was pointed out earlier. You said you deregistered from MCSK. So what alternative body did you register to that collects, and how efficient are they?
Mine is collected by this body called SACEM, which is the French body, and they do a really good job at it. So I think the thing that annoyed me at some point was being sent for 2,000 bob. I was like, I don't, even cables. Like, cables are 2,500 bob. So that annoyed me so much. And I think also we have to really remove ourselves from victim mentality and be like, oh, okay, what is it that I can as an individual? As like, maybe it didn't make a difference to them, but at least I know that when the beginning of the year, I have a statement. The end of the year, I have a statement that is actually makes sense and also gives me enough motivation to be like, oh, okay, we can move further, and it's itemized for me, not the one where someone says, okay, we're gonna pay all of you 5,000 bob, regardless of whether you made any song that year or not, whether you had the biggest song that year or not. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think maybe we should direct our questions to Blinky since he's the one who needs to leave. I would like to have a clearer understanding on how you've been able to, the different ways you've been able to monetize your music, like different platforms. And obviously there's performing, there's collecting. How many ways are working for you? How often do they pay their creatives? I mean, just what you can give us for us to understand how to organize ourselves.
I do very many things, and so, but also I've also done this for a long time. And if you look at the people that make the most out of anything, it's always going to be the people who've stuck it out. So it's whoever has the biggest song in the world this year is not the person that made the most money off of music. It's like they can be in your nini, but it's more the people who have a big catalog. So, like, I'm a DJ, I'm a producer, I'm a performer, I'm a songwriter. There's so many different things where if one thing is not working, something else is working for me as an artist. It's not always like laughing all the way to the bank. Some days it's like, oh, okay, this gives me motivation to keep it pushing. Some days it's like, oh, okay, we need to figure out what else. And you need to also look at, just globally, at the artists who, like, if you look at Rihanna or Jay-Z or Kanye West or any of those guys, I'm not saying we're all gonna be these guys, but what your music or your art does, in my opinion, and if you guys have a differing thought, you can offer it, is that in Jay-Z's catalog, the music is what brings in the least, but it provides him with the name recognition that he can use into something else. So, and just from studying these people, it's something that I'm really getting to understand better. So, Rakim might be looked at as the greatest rapper of all time, but Jay-Z is the one that has pushed it the farthest in terms of like making his name work for it. So it's not even about the music per se, and he's a good musician. It's how much further he's been able to put his name into other different pots. So that's game I've given you for free.
It's going to be the last question. You can address the rest of your questions to Wairimu. Because our panelists need to leave.
I remember before we started MOOC, we were working on something with Just a Band. And at that time, the platform they were most hype about was Bandcamp, right? And the reason they were very hype, Blinky, I can be communications assistant.
Hey, thank you. I forget many things, bruh. I'm old now.
You have to continue the story.
Continue.
The reason they liked it so much is that as they were growing, despite how small their fan base was, Bandcamp allowed the fans to give whatever they wanted. So today, one guy could come and I think it was like $1 as a standard or $10, but there's a guy who would come and then wake up for you $500, right? Now, finding platforms that work best for who you are, because if I have 10 followers and they all choose to give me $500, I don't need to wait for MCSK, right? So there's multiple ways. I mean, now we are in a time where there are NFTs, right? So you don't even need to be blowing up in the normal radio scene. I can go and put my picture and a song in the NFT world tomorrow. KRA or whatever, these guys who are looking for that babe with 100 million, they are now looking for you because you have a lot of chums in your account. I feel like every day the dynamics change. Yes. The most important thing is understanding your audience. If other than just, it's not because there were many Kenyans on Bandcamp that Just a Band was on Bandcamp, but the people that they spoke to, that was the platform where they were best engaged. So when you're choosing platforms, it shouldn't also be like, who pays the most? Then let me look for, because that's what we do, right? Then you find yourself on all platforms but not making any money. I find it easier to even go and commit. I'll use anybody, commit to any one platform and say, I'm going to put all my stuff here. What can you guys give me so that I save on marketing, so that I save on her? As opposed to I'm on 12 platforms which all don't offer me anything. Yeah. So I think those choices really need to be based on you as a creator and your audiences.
Perfect. This is going to be my last point, and then I'm going to be famous. Bandcamp, which is something that I feel like they're the most concerned about the artist in terms of these platforms that are global. And it's such a beautiful thing that they have where every so often there's that Friday where all the proceeds go to the artist. So maybe that's another way to, because as Just a Band, we loved Bandcamp. Like, I think it was Scratch, sorry for the delay, that came out on it. And even now, it's like we still get someone pays like $300 just because I love your work so much. And this is one person. Someone can be like, oh, okay, I'll give you priced this at $5, we'll give you $50 just because we like your work so much. And there's a connection that you can have with your audience, that it's you as an individual artist that can figure that out and make it work for you. Because all these things we're going to talk about is things that have worked for me. Something that's worked for me is not going to automatically work for someone else, because there's a reason why it's working for me. It's not standard. If you can find something for you that works for you, you can be the story that now people are like, oh, that thing worked for them. And then there's a bunch of other people who are looking to figure out what else can we figure out from Echo.
Yes. Wairimu, you want to wrap this up for our Sema students?
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Oh, you?
Sure. One.
Cool.
Sorry, last thing. Ujuaji ni mingi. I think there's something to be said about uniqueness, right? Right now in this class, there's 20 of us. If all 20 of us release the same sound, the same type of vibe, the same everything, we're not building anything, right? We're replicating, we're doing all this stuff. The uniqueness we bring to music, to the industry, and then to the globe is what then sets us apart. So for me, because this sound is so unique and it's blowing up here, then now it'll become an interesting sound to find on platform X or on this. We have so much that we can sell. Our looks, our culture, our food, our fashion, our language. There's so many different things that set us apart from the next electronic act or the next hip-hop act or the next whatever, right? I don't feel like we play enough on that uniqueness. Right, so right now we've because I guess of the structures and the gatekeepers and radio stations and TVs and music videos, we've been forced to be a certain way so that it's hot. So we're all trying to like, how do I be like Blinky? Do I start wearing shades even at night so that, you know, like everybody wants to do the thing everybody does. But if you can't see, you can't see, right? So then you stick in your lane where you just, you wear mashishios, right? Like real mashishio. So I feel like we don't play enough on our uniqueness, and our uniqueness is the thing that will make us sell, right? Those of us who have been privileged to hear here, you guys have very unique sounds. So they're not the most popular, which is why we need machinery, which is why we need to understand distribution, which is why we need to understand which parts of this can we turn into IP so that we always earn. That uniqueness is the thing you need to embrace in your sound, in your look, in your vibes, in your collaborations and those things. So play on that as heavily as possible, because that's what you need to put out. Not the next Blinky Bill. Guys are not looking for another Blinky Bill. They already have the original one. So what does an echo look like? What does Kamushe's sound like? How do we build that uniqueness in ourselves as the thing that then moves you to panel side, right?
Hey. Nice one. Oh, one more question. Yeah.
Just
live performance.
Yeah, so one of my most favorite things about your live sets, Blinky, is how you perform with live hardware. So I was wondering if you could come and hold maybe like a small workshop on that, because that would be really nice.
It's no problem for me, but it's a problem for you. I'll see you guys.
Thank you so much, Blinky. Asante.
Thanks again to all of our panelists, and Sharon, our host, who is not here, and Wairimu, and all the students that are here. Jadili will be happening again, Cindy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is the first edition.
One, Mashakura edition.
Give another round of applause for our panelists, please.
Woo.
And we'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you, guys. Dismissed. Hey. Kawan Club.